of the 21st century. Well, let's go across to Islamabad. Our Tom Mintier is standing there to bring us up to date. Tom, what can you tell us?
Michael, that map you were talking about, the rough neighborhood, we're in one of the houses of that rough neighborhood, Pakistan. President Bush did call President Musharraf, as Major Garrett was talking about earlier, and spent about 10 minutes on the phone. President Musharraf has really gone out on a limb here in Pakistan by providing and pledging support to the United States. Yesterday he held a cabinet meeting and a meeting of his National Security Council. That meeting lasted 4 hours. But just how much dissent or discussion inside, we don't know. We were asked to leave shortly after the pictures were made inside. They opened with a minute of silent prayer for those who were killed in the terrorist attacks in the United States. Then they got down to business discussing the level of cooperation between Pakistan and the United States. When it was all over, Pakistan's foreign minister talked about the United Nations passing a resolution condemning terrorism and going after the perpetrators of the crime. Also, the foreign minister talked about being a charter member of the UN, they have to uphold the resolutions of the United Nations. He spoke very little about the exact extent of the cooperation between the United States and Pakistan. What we do know is that the United States had a rather lengthy wish list, including closing off the border with Afghanistan, reducing the amount of fuel down to zero that was sold to the Taliban. They wanted the intelligence, the human intelligence that's gathered by the Pakistani intelligence services to be provided in assisting a potential strike. These are all things that apparently are on the table and under discussion and possibly have been promised by the Musharraf government. What's going on today inside the president's office are meetings to shore up support for the decision that's apparently already been made by the government. Public leaders, editorial writers, journalists, and even religious leaders will be called to the president's office throughout the day for meetings where he will be basically building a consensus domestically, trying to take the Pakistani public into his confidence that this was the right decision to make. There are a lot of people who may disagree with what the president has decided to do in siding with the United States and providing logistical support, intelligence support, moral support, if you will. But this is a decision that has been made by the leadership here, and it's one that is now today being sold to the population of Pakistan. Michael?
Tom, as you well know, there are many fundamentalist factions within Pakistan. Might General Musharraf be putting his very leadership at risk, or at the same time, do you think perhaps he might get a quid pro quo from the United States? We know that Pakistan's still facing sanctions. Two questions there, but they're kind of linked.
Well, let me take the second one first. There is probably a good possibility that the United States has to offer something, maybe a partial lifting of the sanctions to garner the cooperation of the Pakistani government and military. The first one is, yes, there are a lot of religious fundamentalists who may not agree with this policy, and part of that consensus building that's going on right now, the president meeting with the religious leaders later today, will be an effort to thwart any uprising or trouble in the streets. If there is a military strike against Afghanistan, places like Islamabad could become a very noisy area in the streets if people disagree with the policy for well-founded reasons in their minds. They could really create some domestic upheaval here. I don't think it's enough to really challenge the president's position or his government. You have to remember, this is not a democratically elected government. The elections are far off in the future here, and they control all of the security apparatus and the military. Yesterday, when I met with the president, he was in his uniform. So don't be alluded to think that you're in the standard political system with the opposition. The opposition in Pakistan is a lot different than any other country around the world.
Indeed, Tom. Thanks very much. Tom Mintier in Islamabad with perspective from Pakistan. Well, military experts expect the United States to use a range of options, as we've been discussing, in devising its strategy. Most expect the use of force, when it comes, if it comes, to be massive.
You have air power, which is very capable. It's going to be mixed with a variety of other kinds of actions, and I cross the spectrum of economic sanctions, embargoes, forming alliances that will act in concert against these countries, and as well as military action. So it's going to be long range. It's going to be very, very complicated. I think you'll find that the military activities that occur are going to be selective. They'll be very aggressive and probably in some cases massive, but I think you're going to find that it's going to be a longer term, very carefully orchestrated effort on a magnitude that we have not seen before.
In the country where prime suspect Osama bin Laden has been offered sanctuary, thousands of Afghanis are not waiting for US retaliatory strikes. May they come. Many are already crowding the border with Pakistan in a desperate attempt to flee the country. Western nationals also leaving Afghanistan after the ruling Taliban said it could not guarantee their safety if the US attacks. Now, a short while ago, our Nick Robertson gave us this update from Kabul via video phone.
Well, the latest information we have is that the Iranian government has ordered its border with Afghanistan sealed in the case of the aftermath of an American attack on Afghanistan, that refugees try and flood across the border. Iran says it has 2 million Afghan refugees already and can't take any more. Now, this comes hard on the heels of the Pakistani government giving the go-ahead to United States support. That has implications in Afghanistan as well, because it could mean the border with Pakistan and Afghanistan is sealed. That would mean in the capital here, Kabul, and other cities around the country, shortages of food. Most food coming to Afghanistan comes from Pakistan and Iran. So the outlook for the people here in Kabul and the other cities, fairly bleak. Already we know that there's been a little panic buying, people trying to buy up supplies in case of attack. Food prices have gone up 10 to 15%, and those with a little bit more money have been trying to get out of the city to see relatives in the country, or if they can, flee across those borders, particularly to Pakistan, before the borders close. The Taliban today did try to put pressure on Pakistan not to sign up to help America. They threatened that if any neighbor, particularly an Islamic one, was to help America by giving its soil or airspace to America, then they would consider them an enemy as well in case of attack, and then they might invade that country as well. So that's a clear statement, a clear threat towards Pakistan. A Council of Elders today also told the Taliban here in Afghanistan that they shouldn't close the door to diplomacy, but they did say, and they made it very clear, that if Afghanistan was attacked, then the Council of Elders, which represents many of the tribes here in Afghanistan, would throw their complete support behind the Taliban. Nick Robertson, CNN, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Let's have a look now at India. And India's ambassador to the United States says numerous Indian nationals were lost in the New York City attacks. He said his government is, quote, fully behind the US fight against terrorism, unquote. OK, well, India's External Affairs Minister Jaswant Singh joins us now live from New Delhi for more on India's position. Minister, we've got limited time. Thanks very much for joining us. Your government has said that it supports the United States in this effort. Specifically, what do you mean? Will you allow US troops on Indian soil, for example?
Well, but you are asking me to define exactly what kind of support would be needed and what kind of support will then be provided.
What?
India's fight against terrorism is many decades old, and we have pronounced about terrorism. We have moved the United Nations for a comprehensive convention against terrorism, and we have made it very clear to the US government that we stand solidly with the United States and the international community in its fight against terrorism.
But, sir, can I ask you, Minister, what specifically you are offering the United States? Are you offering airspace rights? Are you offering to allow US troops on Indian soil?
But that is for the United States and the concert of democracies. And as this situation develops, to ask of India, we have not yet been asked for any specific. And besides, for me to start defining would also be a violation of the intelligence requirements of the situation.
The left in India has said that it does not support the US staging attacks from Indian soil. How do you deal with that politically?
How do I couldn't hear. Who has said that?
The left parties on the left in India have said they do not support India being used as a staging post.
Yes, I understand. But we had a full meeting with all the parties of the opposition, and they have all come out entirely in support of the government stand in its fight against terrorism. What the left parties have said is what they have been holding to for quite a length of time.
Are you concerned about what will be the necessary relationship with Pakistan as this unfolds? Are you concerned that deals may be done? Are you concerned that Pakistan is perhaps edging closer to the United States as a result of this?
Well, you must please understand that India's relationship with the United States is not a hyphenated relationship. It's not a reflection or a reaction, and is not to be seen through the prism of any other kind of prejudice. India's relations with the United States are based on values, on democracy, subscription to democracy, on human rights, freedom, and these are not temporary issues or aspects. I think there is a particular situation, a very grim reality faces the world today, and it should be, in fact, trivializing the whole challenge if we began addressing our response to that challenge in this kind of fashion.
We could, however, conceivably see an alliance of sorts between the United States, Russia, Pakistan and India. Obviously, an inconceivable alliance only a couple of years ago. Do you think it's an alliance that would work in this regard, in this set of circumstances?
Well, I have stated so publicly and shared that thought with the political spectrum of India, that what India stands for is really the establishment of a concert of democracies against terrorism, unified in purpose and in resolve. Because as President Bush quite rightly has pointed out, that the issue is really addressing ourselves to the system, that mentality which gives birth to these kinds of attitudes.
Okay.
It is not as if an individual has declared war against a great country like United States of America, and United States is in turn declaring war against an individual.
Okay,
it is the system that gives rise to all these tendencies
Jaswant
that we
Singh,
have to collectively address.
We have to leave it there. Jaswant Singh, Indian External Affairs Minister, live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Minister, for being with us. Okay, back to you now, Colleen.
All right, Michael, thanks very much to you. We want to bring you up to date now on what's going on in New York at Ground Zero. As you know, only 5 survivors have been discovered among that rubble in New York City. That's since Tuesday. Thousands of tons of debris have now been removed from the area around the collapsed World Trade Center towers. That's helped relief workers recover 159 bodies, 60 of them still unidentified. Almost 5,000 people remain missing, most presumed dead. But the city's mayor is still holding out hope that survivors could be found.
We're advised that you cannot, at this point, rule out the possibility that there may still be people that are alive, and the experts inform us of that. So if there's any chance to save even a single human life, we're going to try.
Well, Gary Tuchman joins us now from a rooftop position near the recovery site at the World Trade Center. Gary, we just heard the mayor saying that experts tell him, technicians tell him, that there could still be people alive. What is it that they're hearing that still gives them hope?
I don't think it's anything they're hearing, Colleen. It's just that the possibility does exist that people could be in pockets, which they referred to as voids, and they could still be alive. We know from earthquakes throughout the world that people can survive for more than a week in situations like that. So that's what they're hoping for. You know, it's Sunday morning right now in New York City, and soon the sun will come up on this most peaceful day of the week, but the scene here in this part of Manhattan is anything but peaceful. The streets are full of emergency vehicles, and behind me there's the potential that 4,900 bodies are buried beneath the rubble of where the World Trade Center went down. It's an incredible number of victims. Just consider the fact, for an average, that each person has 100 family members and friends. That means that 500,000 people would be directly affected by this, and that may be underestimating the number. We want to show you some close-up pictures of the rubble and the efforts tonight, or actually Saturday,